Good evening, everybody. It's another Sunday night at 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and it's time for Talking TSR once again. I am your host, one of your co-hosts, Chris, and to my virtual left, as always, is Rick. How's it going, Rick?
Doing good. How are you? How are you doing, my friend?
Doing well, doing well. Not gonna lie, we had our seventh session of our playtest yesterday that I've been doing top secret playtests. I haven't even been able to announce what this is for. And I am not gonna lie, I'm having so much fun doing this. I've got a great group. We have a lot of role playing. I've got one of the Goodman Games dudes is with us, and he doesn't play much 5e. So he's working on his 5e skills, and we are just having an absolute blast. We have a lizard folk warrior in the group who just threatens to eat all the people we capture. And it's got great intimidation skills, and it's just so we're having an absolute blast. So it's a lot of fun. It is just tremendous. If you guys didn't check out our DCC retrospective show on Friday night, we had a big shindig on Twitch. Rick and I were both on it. We talked about the olden days before DCC RPG was created. That's the demographic that we're from, before DCC RPG, and we had a blast. That show will be up on YouTube in a couple of days, so folks, hopefully you guys can check that out. And how are you doing, Rick? What's going on in your world?
I'm doing good. As you know, because I've been texting you pictures constantly, I've been delving into my childhood closet, which I think we're going to call the closet of holding now, and it just keeps regurgitating these items of gaming goodness. So I'm foreseeing a hidden treasures show for us where
we got to do that. We got to do
with
that.
Audience participation, where we all share our treasures.
I don't care if nobody turns in to see what you pull out of your closet, but I will just be ooh and ah and everything. Can we do you have the technology to set up a webcam where you're at the closet?
And the closet is.
You know what? We can do this like a movie. Like,
I know, right?
Closet. We can stage all this. We just need a closet somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. We need a closet. Yeah, the closet. I hit the bottom of the closet as of today, but there was, as you know, because I'm saying this to the audience. Poor Chris. I just send him pictures. Like, I just keep texting him photos of things I'm finding in this closet. It's unreal. So which you folks would appreciate. So yeah.
So maybe let us know in the comments if you guys want to see a show on Rick pulling stuff out from the closet of holding from the 70s and 80s. And we're talking toys, we're talking comics, we're talking magazines, we're talking game books, we're talking Appendix N novels. Did I miss anything? You got everything.
Yeah, I think you got all the food groups, you name it. It's been today I was finding Grenadier catalogs from the early 1980s. So
signed Elmore prints.
Signed Elmore prints
multiple,
today.
Not just one signed Elmore print. If you're gonna buy something at Larry Elmore's booth, man, you might as well get a couple of things. G Blaster's already
he's giving us
he's all like, yes,
positive
that's
sentiment.
exactly the show. All right, G Blaster, it might just be you, Rick, and myself.
There we go. That's all we need.
And Elena behind the glass, but we'll do that show. So we'll put that in the closet of holding show coming soon. And stay tuned, guys, to the end of the show. We actually have an announcement. We're gonna do something a little different. Next time. I think we teased a little bit this season 3, that we're going to try some different things. We're going to see if they work, if they don't work. So stay tuned to the end. We're going to talk about a very different format of our show for next time. And then hopefully next week we'll be ready to announce our first guest appearance of the year, which I am working diligently to get set up. But this week we are talking about, again, I say this every single time, I might as well just write this on my show sheet every week. I might as well, but we have another fantastic show for you guys, because we don't do bad shows, we just do fantastic shows. We are talking about a classic, the module S2 White Plume Mountain. So this is a classic module. Rick, why don't you kick us off with just some of your overview and high level views of this module?
Sure. Well, written by Lawrence Schick, certainly a well-known name to D&D players, former head of design for TSR. I definitely consider this kind of our first original funhouse dungeon, as I like to call them. Sort of like a tournament dungeon that's not a tournament dungeon, but puzzle rooms galore.
It wasn't an actual tournament, was it? I don't believe it was an
No,
actual tournament. So
no, it feels like it should be a
it
tournament, but
does. It
it's
does.
not.
Yeah.
And because it has that, every room's got a puzzle kind of thing. And
Yep.
it was listed, what was it, number 9 in
Number
Dungeon
9.
Magazine's top 30 adventures. They called it in that description there, the puzzle dungeon and all
Yeah.
puzzle
And
dungeons.
and let me just sidetrack you for a second here. It's like, it is amazing, that list, that top 30 list that was done in 2004 by Dungeon Magazine. We still use that list today. It's almost, that list is almost 20 years older, and we always go back and reference that. And lots of other people, there are folks out there on the internet that actually posted that list up there, and they put their list up next to it and everything. I am amazed that we are still using that list kind of as the benchmark of these great modules. So just wanted to throw that out. I just thought about that earlier today. So
if I remember, they had quite a roster of
panel.
judges. Yeah, right. Kind of a white star, blue star panel, or whatever you want to call it. They had set up reviewing those modules. So you had people like Ed Greenwood and all these dignitaries sort of D&D land all giving their thoughts. So it's a solid list. I can't get my head around the fact that it's almost 20 years old, but absolutely valid. So yeah, that's my main thought, is just absolute funhouse dungeon. You have to go in here with your kind of tongue in your cheek and just say, I'm going to have fun, and not really look for a lot of logic or a lot of this. You got to just go in and just, it's a zany dungeon. But that said, it's a challenging dungeon. It absolutely could be difficult, I think, for
not a whole lot of dungeon ecology going on in this one.
No.
more a kind of check that at the door. And it's basically like a lot of fun. And interesting story about the backstory of this module. So apparently when Lawrence was interviewing for TSR, he sent the manuscript for this module to them, kind of as his here's what I could do for you guys. This is the story, allegedly the story. And they hired him, and then they not only did they hire him, but they said, oh yeah, we just want to publish this as is. And apparently he was a little bit embarrassed, because he didn't realize, he basically just cobbled a bunch of ideas like a funhouse, threw them all together and submitted it, not thinking anybody would ever publish it as an actual module. And he said he probably would have done a little bit of better job with it, as far as making some continuity and things in that. Because if there's one thing this module doesn't have, is a lot of continuity. And it's also not very long. And that's an understatement, actually, not very long.
So we're looking at what, 27 encounters.
Eight pages. It's the length of one of the Against the Giant modules.
The version I've got here is the expanded version.
I've got me as well.
But I did have the original, and it was like shockingly skinny. It still staggers me just how thin some of these books that we consider real classics are, like this module, the Giants modules. Just a lot of these were like 8 and 12 page modules. It's crazy. But again, that said, I think there's a lot of fun to be had in this module. So, so long as you can check your ecology at the door and you can kind of get past that. I know I've criticized these kind of funhouse modules in the past, and I think sometimes I tilt a little too hard away from them. But in this case, I do have some good memories running this. I certainly went through it as a player and a DM. And I think that's why it holds up. I think everybody, they've at least heard of this module, and most likely they've gone through it or DM'd it. I've run into so many people that have DM'd this module for whatever reason.
I would agree. This one's probably with B2, maybe B1 and maybe X1, because those came in the box sets that you got. This one of all, I mean, Toma Horrors, a lot of people didn't play Toma Horrors because they didn't have characters high enough level, or that wasn't their cup of tea, or the game master's like, I don't even know what to do with this, or kind of thing. But this one is approachable and short. And it's interesting. I mean, you have to admit, there's not many boring encounters in there. There's a lot of interesting details, and I think it really does appeal to, but like you said, both players and game masters. And I've personally DM'd this one probably 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen times.
Oh wow!
Maybe. Yeah, it's probably, again, one of the ones I've probably run a lot of times in my collection. So.
And like I said, I think it can be hard. It has a very wide range of, levels 5 to 10 is a pretty
Yep.
wide
Yeah.
gap. So
Agreed.
that being said, what do you think about the art as far as, and we'll deal with the expanded edition. We might as well go with that.
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, there was that little starburst on the front there in white, was saying that it was an expanded edition with extra art, and it was indeed extra art. So that this edition was bloated out to 16 pages, and about half of it was artwork and
Mhm.
some beautiful half-page pictures. Elena, if you want to throw up the halfling picture, and then maybe after that, if you want to toss up there any of the other artwork that we sent you. I'm blanking off the top of my head of a different one, maybe the giant crab one.
Yeah, the crab.
So there was some full page artwork, and
Yeah.
then it seemed like every single page had lots of art. And the thing about the art is, in my opinion, is first of all, it was great art. It was Errol Otis did art, Diesel did art, I believe, in there. It was great quality, but it was really important to have the art to really finish the mental picture of what some of the encounters were. I mean, you could
Mhm.
describe some of these encounters, but like having the artwork also, not that they were designed as handouts like Tomo Pars where you can share them with the players or not, but it really, here's a description, and you read the description, like,
Yeah.
what is going on in this room? But then here's some
Mhm.
artwork, and you're like, oh, I know exactly what's going on in this room now because I
Yeah.
can see it. So
No,
so
I
I thought that was
agree.
brilliant, absolutely
I
brilliant.
agree wholeheartedly because like you said, it's not strictly labeled as handout art, and yet,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we'll get to some of the encounters when we go into it a little deeper, but just the picture for for lack of a better term, the whirling tunnel, or the picture of the
Yep.
suspended discs room, to
Yep.
be able to show the player that picture of those discs, it explains so much as opposed to trying to describe, or even the giant crab for that matter. They
Hmm.
kind of almost jokingly describe it as just the biggest giant crab, but I think you really need the picture to show the players just how big this particular crab is.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, I love the art in there. Back cover art is really interesting, I think, because I don't think we gave Elena the picture, but I will hold it up here because it
Oh, the
basically
back
shows,
cover. Yeah.
Black Razor in detail. Very interesting picture there. So yeah, good mix, like you said, Errol Otis kind of, doing the chores, and then we have that glorious wilderness map by Errol Otis, which I really
Oh,
like. Uh,
yeah. Actually, you can throw that up there,
we have
Elena.
that. Yeah, we can throw
The
that
area
up.
map.
Uh,
Yeah, that is again, it's not the map doesn't really serve anything in the adventure,
mhm.
but give you some tantalizing launching off points. And I think that's what's amazing about this module is there's all of these little touch points of, you know, here's go this way off of the map and there's a Draco Lich, and go this way and there's
Mhm.
a mysterious witch that sells potions, but we're not going to tell you anything else about it. That really lends you to, oh, I want to design that. Like, I want to see where that Draco Lich
Mhm.
lives, and I want to go plunder his treasure. Almost, I won't say it steals the thunder away from the adventure that we have, but it just adds to it. And again, a lot of it is just these little lines, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say throwaway lines, but throwaway lines that are like so evocative, and you're like, you just want more.
Mhm.
And I think Lawrence did a great job with that.
Yeah,
Fabulous job with that.
I definitely agree. So now I guess what I think is the elephant in the room, the three items of power.
Yes. The
What's
three
your
huge
take on
artifacts.
those?
Yeah. Love them actually.
Mhm.
I just absolutely, you know, the detail that they got. Now I do realize that the sword was like a rip off of the Elric sword.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which I never read. Again, I don't read much Appendix N novels and that. So my wife's read all about it. But so to me, that was brand new, and that was
mhm,
fresh, and that was exciting. And I was like, oh, this is really kind of neat. That's Black Razor. There
yeah,
was Whelm, the dwarven hammer or axe hammer, I think it
mhm,
was. And then there was Wave, the trident.
yeah,
And each of these items were detailed. They got like a paragraph or write up. They were clearly, I guess they were artifacts, I
yeah.
guess, because
They're
they
powerful.
had
They're
they were
powerful.
sentient in the game today. They're sentient weapons, but
Mhm,
with all sorts of crazy abilities.
yeah,
But it was cool. They just had they oozed all kinds of theme and atmosphere, and
mhm,
but potentially could wreck your campaign if your characters get them. But you
Yeah.
know, at that point, especially if you were 5th level, or 5th or even 5th or 7th level, getting one of these items is probably a little bit overpowering. But I think most of us who played back in the day had one of these 3 weapons. Our favorite character had one of these 3 weapons because we invariably went through these modules, and we had them. And that's the funny thing about that is wasn't necessarily the primary weapon that we had, but we had my character's got whelm kind of strapped to his back too,
Yeah.
just in case he needs a dwarven hammer or something. But what did you think about the artifact?
That's the second adventure for the DM, is getting the characters to actually give the weapons back. But
Yep.
I love them. I think it's 3. I consider them artifacts. I think it's 3 good examples of artifacts.
Yes,
I definitely got the Elric kind of connotation of the sword, and I think anybody who got deities and demigods later and read about Morn Blade and these swords in there got it. But I like them. I think they're well realized, very powerful, but
very
3 good examples for a DM, I think, of how to build out artifacts, sentient weapons. So I like them. I think it adds a lot of flavor. It certainly gives the character something to go after too. So I think the way I tried to run it in my campaign is I tried to definitely get the characters to return these at some point, but I gave them their kind of time of fun with each item, and certainly as they picked them up in the dungeon, they tended to then use them for the rest of the dungeon. So
yes.
I know my character, my players got a real kick out of that. So that was fun. I like that a lot.
Nice. So what I was amazed that this module has gotten a lot of attention throughout many of the editions. So obviously it was a 1st edition module. It was in 2nd edition, it got the Return to White Mountain treatment that several of the other classic modules got, as Wizards of the Coast was kind of transferring to Power, and they were working on 3rd edition. It got a 3.5 edition update that I believe was free on the Wizards website, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then it was converted to 5th edition. It was one of the modules in Tales of the Yawning Portal. So,
that's right.
So again, much like Tome of Horrors and Keep on the Borderlands, the fact that TSR / Wizards of the Coast kept going back to it, really kind of shows that it's got some design chops to it, and it's got some old school goodness, and a lot of people recognize it. And you go on the internet, there are just a bazillion fans that have their versions of the maps, and just beautiful, gorgeous maps that they've redone for either tabletop versions, for either VTT versions, or just they just wanted to make a cool looking map or something. And fan art and everything. And actually that's the reason why I couldn't find a good picture of that back cover art, because there wasn't a safe one to download. My computer kept saying not safe. So I was like, oh. And then I couldn't get a really solid one. I'm like, oh well, we'll just talk about the back cover, and like you said, just
there we
hold
go.
it up, and I think that works. I think that works just as well and everything. So all right. I think anything else about this module before we jump into it?
Let's see. Well, we've got one new monster, right? We've got the Kelpie, which I think is a solid offering.
One of those rare monsters that doesn't have an attack or damage, but could certainly kill your character.
So
definitely. Without a doubt.
So I think that it's a shame we only got one new monster, but I like the one they threw in, so I think it works.
I mean, technically we'd never gotten that crab before, but it just didn't get the full write-up. I mean, I believe there was a giant crab with like 3 hit dice in the monster manual, 3 or 4 hit dice in the monster manual, but nothing on the scale of the quote crab, just about as big as any crab as you've ever seen.
This was the crab to end all crabs. And my one last thought, I guess, before we delve into our list is the whole major bad guy element, the Caraptus, is really not explored that deeply. And you don't confront him, which is now, I think some people could be upset by that, some GMs, and I think other people could think that's a really cool launching point for other adventures and for the DM to run with that and make a recurring villain, or make, like, have him occasionally keep coming back with messages, or the players track him down perhaps from layer to layer, or there's a lot of options. So I think that was interesting. That was sort of like a risky almost gamble, I think, that the module did that.
Yeah, I think he actually is, because he was like from 1,000 years ago. If there's the legend of him in the back, and it starts out a millennium ago, the wizard Corruptus. So I guess the thought process is he's either immortal, or he's a lich, or he's something if he's still around.
Yeah,
but
an
they
imposter.
They don't, or an imposter. And I believe, it's funny, I just didn't have the time to dig it out today, but I'm fairly certain there was a sequel done in Dungeon Magazine. If anybody remembers this, and they want to throw it in the chat, but I'm pretty sure somebody did a sequel in Dungeon Magazine, and I thought it was like Ex Carapatus. It was something with Latin, I think, in its title, or the hook of the module was this or something. But I just did not have the time to go digging through all 150 of my magazines to look for that very one and everything. So but anyway, so again, I think somebody might have given some of that backstory. One of the really cool things that I really enjoyed, and it inspired me heavily in this module, I will say, if anything, has definitely inspired me to create encounters on other things that I've done for Goodman games. But the riddle that they give, kind of the setup basically for the whole module, is like, here, read this riddle, and that kind of gets you started. I just want to read a couple lines of this, and then I want to read a couple lines of something that I did that was so heavily inspired by it. You'll see exactly what the connections are. So here's the beginning first couple stanzas of the riddle from S2. Search ye far, or search ye near, you'll find no trace of the three, unless you follow instructions clear, for the weapons abide with me. North past forest, farm, and furrow, you must go to the feathered mound, then down away from the sun you'll burrow. Forget life, forget light, forget sound. To rescue wave, you must do battle with the beast in the boiling bubble. Crossed cavern vast, with chain links rattle, lies whelm past water spouts trouble. I don't know, can't even read that road because it's all a fancy script. So anyway, so that was basically, and there's more of it telling you about the other one. And then here's what's a couple passages, and make it seem like if this actually sounds familiar or not, but this is part of the Rhyme of Shards from Crypt of the Devil Lich. So this is in Crypt of the Devil Lich, you get this passage, this rhyme, if you will, that kind of tells you all about the dungeon. And it begins, the shards of true death are key, scattered about on levels 3, encased in a crystal prison without a door, but only the first, there are 5 more. I hold the next shard of true death, but beware my fiery breath. So you can see the inspiration there is directly. I mean, I basically was like, I want a riddle just like in S2 that's going to be the whole basis of Crypt of the Devil Lich. And there's a couple of other things that I've used too, that have inspired encounters and everything. So just a kind of a neat way to kind of start a module.
And I love modules that do that. It started for me with the Tomb of Horrors, but I like when there's that sort of clue / poem or, stanza kind of thing in the beginning, because it gives the characters, or I should really say the players, something to double back on. They can keep kind of pulling it out and looking at it, and gives them a running clue. But it also gives the villain a sense of personality. It really gives, I don't know, I think it makes the villain a little more immediate when they feel like the villain's sort of talking to them or taunting, them through a poem. And certainly in this case, it's done. And like you said, I guess, the classic status of this module is evident in the fact that, you want to copy. There's elements in here that you can't help but get inspired by. I know I mentioned it to you, kind of outside the show, the chained platform encounter, which I'm going to go into later as well. That directly inspired me. One of the first, I think, modules I ever had published or adventures was for Dungeon Magazine. It was a module in Dungeon 67. I think we have that cover kicking around, Alina. And I did a module called Training Ground. And I had a room in there that was very much inspired by the platform encounter in White Plume Mountain, and that I had an area on the training ground map where you had to jump from, pillar to pillar to pillar. And I think we have that map too. And it was absolutely like one absolutely inspired the other. I tried desperately to keep them different, and put my own
Yeah.
spin on it. But I just thought the platforms are so cool. I'm like, I have to do something like this. And I find myself, I keep going back to that idea of going from platform to platform, or jump to jump kind of thing. So yeah, very inspiring, very inspiring.
Yeah. We got some great comments in the chat here. Hippie grenade, not afraid to have fun with an adventure is big. Those kinds of things are great to have in a module. Players love these teases. Yeah, that's the riddle
Yeah.
part. And then Xavion 85 ran my group through this module. They had a blast. The frictionless floor was especially fun.
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Yes, reminds me of the Golden Child. Oh yes, I have the knife. Can I have the knife, please? So yeah, Golden Child, the very unrated, not unrated, definitely not unrated, underrated movie. That was cool. I remember seeing that in the theater actually. So which is crazy. Wow, we could do a whole show on
I know these
questionable,
adventure,
dubious
right?
quality
Yeah.
fantasy
You
movies.
think of the end of Golden Child, or you think of
Yeah.
Indiana Jones with the one with the Holy Grail, where he's kind of doing that.
Yeah.
And what D&D player doesn't love watching those, so
Yeah, definitely.
that's another show right there.
Yep. A little bit of Hawk the Slayer. Oh yeah. Zor the Hunter. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. So I just actually literally just last night finished a rewatch of the original Planet of the Apes movies. Now I obviously I know and love the original, but I did not. I think I watched one or two or parts of the other ones, but I was like, you know what? I'm watching all these suckers, and I streamed them, and I can report. Spoiler alert, people: the other four movies are really not that good, so it's probably not worth watching unless you're going to dedicate yourself to watching all of them. And some of them are they take some crazy turns and everything, but yeah, anyway, I just, it was just one of those things. I was just like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna watch all those classics and everything. I've not seen the reboot ones. I did see the really bad one in like 2001.
Yeah,
that one was
same here. I think that
I think I'm still scarred by that one.
Exactly. That was enough for me. I just,
you know
what, the classic was good. Watch the classic. At the Statue of Liberty, just stop, folks.
Yes.
Don't go any further.
Stop. Don't even go any further. Come on, it's the search for more money, though, man. The search for money. But yeah, that 2001, and I'm not sure if I'm getting that year right or whatever.
Yeah,
that one was that twist at the end. Was I just remember leaving the theater, and I was being like, I just remember being like, I was kind of like, the movie wasn't great, but it's like if it would have ended 2 minutes earlier, I probably would have walked out and said, all right, it wasn't a waste of money. It's like, that was. Yeah, there's not been too many times I've walked out of the theater being like, what was I doing there? So Beastmaster 2, Through the Portal of Time was one of those. I'm such a Beastmaster fan that you couldn't get me away from that one. So but anyway, and I own the soundtrack for Beastmaster 2, so I bet you not too many of our listeners own the soundtrack to that. So all right, let's get on. We're having too much fun here. So
there we go. All right.
So let's say we're not going to do in top 5 encounters because there's only 27 encounters in the modules, and if we did top 5 encounters only, we would have definitely had crossover. So we're trying to avoid that. So we're basically doing parts of the module. So it can be an encounter, it could be a monster, it can be it can be whatever. So we're doing our top 5 on that. I don't even know who's starting. I think I started last time, so why don't you go first this time? I can't remember, Rick. So
all right, I'll start. That's fine. I've got a mix. I've got about half and half, I think, here.
Me too.
I have an honorable mention, which I'm just going to throw out, which is Area 4. And this was hard because I have 1 or 2 honorable mentions I could have done, but I did Area 4, the globes, the room with the hanging globes.
Yep. Okay.
As you well know, and I've mentioned on this show previously, I love rooms where you can explore multiple things, where the players have the option to fool around with multiple statues or multiple mirrors or multiple paintings or and different things have different effects. I always love that. It never gets old. It's always fun at the table. I think as a DM, I love running those. I get a kick out of the players fooling around with different things and, the wheel and woe aspect and everything. And the globes was that room for me in this module. I think there's some creative things with what they put into the globes with the keys, and here the characters really had a motivation to, you know, open these globes up if they wanted to, you know, proceed. So that's my honorable mention, is the
Cool.
globes room. So do you have an
Okay.
honorable mention?
I do kind of too. The
Okay.
one I've already talked about is the riddle. I
Mhm.
thought the riddle was, I mean, the riddle probably should have been in my top 5 list, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I got that as an honorable mention, but also the Crepitus backstory at
Mhm.
the end of the module. And again, it's there. I don't even think the module tells you how to use it. I think it's just like, you know, oh, hey, we need to fill a page and, you know, let's put some really big font and some big type up there. And let's just, you know, ramble on about like this guy and maybe some of his motivations and all that. So that's probably my honorable mention along with the riddle.
Nice. Okay. All right, skipping on to my number 5. I do have another area here because I had to put it in there somewhere. Area 17, giant crab. How
Right.
can you not like a Godzilla-sized giant crab, you know,
Yeah.
inside a
I think we
big
have the art
globe?
for that.
Yeah, we have the crab art. The fact that you have to fight the crab within this sort of bubble, or this, you know, giant sphere that's suspended over this sort of boiling lake, just tops it off for me. It takes the crab encounter, a giant crab you've already sold me, but by putting it within that, you know, unique environment where the characters could really get into a very dangerous situation if they puncture this, you know, this sphere, that put it over the top for me. So that's my number 5. I think enough said. Giant crab, you know, what's not to like?
Awesome. Love it. Okay, my number 5 is sort of an encounter. This is the end note. This is at the very end of the module. This could be the first time we've had a concluding the adventure section, but a concluding the adventure section that actually has stuff going on. It was kind of interesting. So this was basically like 2 paragraphs at the very end of the module, and they basically say that, you know, when you're concluding the module, that a wall of force could appear across area 2. And then a taunting voice comes, allegedly Charybdis's voice comes, and he basically says, you guys are not really leaving with those magic items. It's like you're gonna stay here. And he goes, I'm gonna go send 2 of my henchmen to go gather you. And he sends Nyx and Nox to Afreet, which are like pretty badass.
Yeah.
You know, and they even say, oh, if the PCs are like not wounded or there's a lot of them or they're high level, feel free to send, you know,
4.
Fox and Nox. Send 4 of them.
Yeah.
And they basically are going to escort you to the indoctrination center. And they really don't kind of say what's going to happen, because they kind of imply in there that the PCs aren't going to be stupid to do this.
Right.
It's like,
I always pictured
say,
a rack and thumbnails, and you know.
yeah. Basically, it's like they're not going to really do this, right? But if they do, that basically the author says, "Have fun, game master. Do what you want to do." I love that. I love the "have fun, game master," but then giving you again that tantalizing, like, oh wow, cool. There's like a little bit of something here. So that's my number 5. Is actually, it's called the end note. It's kind of like the epilogue, if you will, but there's actually an encounter in there, and I remember using it. I remember using it and having a lot of fun with it. And just when they thought it was done and over, it just kept going on.
That's a good choice. I didn't even think of mentioning that one, but I remember that. It's definitely a not so fast moment. And I see Xavier in the comments is mentioning that his experience with the globe, or her experience with the globe room, was a couple of bad rolls from a TPK. Ouch.
Yes.
So yikes. I never said it wasn't dangerous, but still fun. My number 4, and we touched on it a little earlier, is the Wilderness Map by Errol Otis, and you really enumerated the reasons very well, Chris, already. I love the fact that it bespeaks to future adventures. It gives the DM ideas, it gives the player its ideas. I think it's something that should absolutely be shared with the players as a way to say, hey, you know, is there anything here that catches your interest? You know, maybe they want to go look at the castle ruins, or maybe they want to go seeking, you know, Dragotha, the undead dragon, or whatever. And I love maps like that give you a hint of other evil areas or other evil ruins or things, because it's just always good ideas, you know, gives you something to run with, gives the players ideas. Even in a recent campaign that I've been running, I made a point of making a Greyhawk map, I think it was, and putting some ruins purposely on the map that was sort of not really where the players were going at the moment, but just, putting it out there. So they knew like, hey, there's some ruins over here and there's an odd swamp over here and that kind of thing. And I like that. So that's my number 4 is the wilderness map.
Nice. All right. My number 4 is, it's actually 2 encounters, but they work kind of very well together. This is areas 23 and 24. This is the stream flowing through the air. So you walk into a square room and there's a stream coming out of one wall. And it's like semicircular and it's suspended in midair. Yep, we got the picture. That's awesome. And then it goes back into the other wall and there's kayaks there, 2-person kayaks. And it's like, so, and there's room that you can get in the kayak. Apparently it's a little difficult to kind of position the kayaks in the water. If anybody's gotten into a kayak before, or a canoe, you know how this is. Imagine trying to do this, and they actually even touch on that a little bit. But you can actually go through the tunnel, and it's actually an easy way to get to area 24. Because otherwise, the only other way to find area 24 is through not 1, not 2, but 3 secret doors to actually even find area 24. But in area 24, and again, totally doesn't make any sense. But you have Sir Bluto, a fallen knight, and his 8 companions, fighters, and they have nets, and they're ready for when you come through, zipping through in your kayaks. They've got nets, and they're going to net you, Planet of the Apes style, as I kind of bring that all the way full circle there. And then they pull you out of the water, and then they just say, after they pull you out of the water, they imply that you're going to be stunned. They just work you over with swords, and that's probably the end of you. But what, again, also really cool about this, that was good enough. But then, Lawrence actually puts a couple of lines that Sir Bluto was indicted for the, and I quote, the River of Blood massacre, and he escaped prison and baffled the royal magician detectives in wherever he was held in prison. So those couple of lines are just like, there's like more adventures there. And it's like, I'm always like, I want some of that, like, adventure with my side. I want a side of that with, White Plume Mountain. So those are really kind of cool. So it was just, again, off the wall. Check your physics and everything at the door, at the front entrance before the wall of force closes in on it. But just a kind of a crazy encounter. But I don't know, I just loved it, and I love that little add-on part and everything. So that's my number 4, areas 23 and 24.
Nice, definitely. I think an area that people think of when they think of this book. Yes. They don't think of the crab; they think of that floating stream or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think Odysseus, I'm going to say, had a comment or a question about the conversion process. Feel free to throw them out there. I think we can kind of, might have to do with 5e conversions, but yeah, certainly if you folks have questions, throw them in. Rolling right on to area 3 in the, my third pick in the meantime, though, would be area 7, the suspended platforms. Love it. I love the way it's done because it's brought to the extreme. Jumping from platform to platform is cool, but the fact that Schick has put sort of slippery algae on the platforms, mentioned that the platforms tilt, and then for good measure, you have 2 geysers, which are the 2 geysers mentioned in the poem initially, in the room. It just sends it over the top for me. It makes it like a little mini obstacle course in a room. Like I've already said, very inspirational for me when it comes to writing multiple adventures. I've used that room for sort of some kind of inspiration. So I love the suspended platforms area. I couldn't not put it in my list. So that is my number 3 pick, area 7.
Yeah. And yes, also, following up on your comment there, ask some questions about their experiences of the conversion process. So we have not, Goodman Games has not converted this specific module, but if you do have questions about how we would go about converting some things, drop them in the chat, and if we have some time, we'll definitely get to those. My number 3 is Shock and Amazement crossover, area 17, the giant crab. You knew
absolutely
the giant crab was going to speak to me. So we've got the artwork in. We got to put that artwork up again because it's just, you can't see the giant crab enough times. Yes, but it's like, not only is it a giant crab, like you said, it's in the underneath the rubber membrane underneath the boiling lake. And you touched about the crab and everything, but the crab is Dude, the crab is 15 hit dice, 60 hit points. That's like a serious crab. 2
Yeah.
attacks per round, 3 to 18 damage per attack. I mean, I get it. They're 10th level characters, but 30 points of damage in a first
Yeah.
edition module in one round
Yeah.
is that can wreck your character. Even your 10th
Mhm.
level fighter probably has 50 or 60 hit points, probably.
Yeah.
So that's phenomenal. But if you're not careful and if you have piercing weapons or slashing weapons, you could probably rupture that membrane and it could collapse and you can bring the
Mhm.
boiling lake down on you and you're probably going to die. But what you forgot to mention, Rick, was the crab was guarding Wave, the trident,
Yeah.
and the trident has an ability that it will tell you via telepathy as soon as you grab it that it can make a cube of force and it can actually protect you from the
Mm.
boiling water of the lake. So if you grab the trident, and who's not going to grab the trident because
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
awesome and they know that they're there to get it, and you can actually survive inside the cube, and the cube can blow you up out through the plume, and you can actually like tumble, Indiana Jones refrigerator style, down the side of the mountain. And I mean, there's probably bludgeoning damage involved, but anyway. So I thought that's probably what took this encounter over the top for me. The
Mhm.
fact that there was this, oh look, we can make a cube of force here, and they could actually survive this, even though they
Yeah.
probably are being stupid in collapsing the thing on them in the first place. So I thought that's what really put that encounter over the top for me. So the
Mhm.
the using the cube of force, and I think I've always kind of learned that lesson too, is like design an encounter and then have the spell or the scroll or the potion or something
Yeah.
nearby that can be
Yep.
utilized with that encounter so that
Yeah.
they can really sing together.
Yeah.
So
Give
I
them
think
that
that's
out.
what's brilliant. And
Yeah.
so that's my number 3, Area 17, first
Nice.
crossover.
I definitely knew that was coming in there. So ding, there's our first
Yes.
crossover, you know. And neither one of us mentioned the band on the crab's arm. The crab, right? The crab also
Yes.
had an armband that made it psionic proof,
Hmm.
which even when this module came out, psionics wasn't a huge thing in most games, but it
But
was in there. So
it was probably new enough that everybody was doing it, and
yeah.
everybody rolled the whatever percentage, and they had
Oh
psionic characters. It
yeah.
was probably one of those things like, running through the TSR offices, everybody had a psionic character.
Yeah,
So they
I
were
mean,
like,
my players did, and and it was, you had all the attack forms in the DMG and all that kind of, it was a presence within the monster manual, certainly. So, Sonics was a thing. It's just such a weird choice. It's interesting.
yeah,
Um, what do we okay?
you're at number 2.
Going back to number 2, my number 2 point would be what I'm going to call the tri-point dungeon design. I like or branching dungeon design for an easier way. And if we can throw up the dungeon map again, I like the fact that rather than having one linear path, the players
Hmm.
sort of have 3 goals and 3 paths. And if the players are thinking about the fact that there's 3 items and they come in, they see this branching 3-way path, it might even dawn on them, hey, we've got to go 3 ways through here. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I like that kind of dungeon where you can take multiple paths where there isn't an obvious end room or beginning room, but you kind of go different ways, and maybe there's different themes or there's different experiences going down each path, giving the players some variety and more choice, or at least illusion of choice. So that's my number 2 point, because I honestly didn't see it done in a lot of modules of the day. We've got modules and then we've got sandbox modules, but I don't see many that hit that nice middle point where you see that just a very non-linear dungeon design. So that's my number 2 point, is I just thought the branching design was a cool factor.
That's a great point. We've talked about it on this show a couple of times. You don't want to railroad your players.
Yeah.
Allegedly, a dungeon already railroads players because they can only go in the areas that have been carved out of the earth already. So, but you always want to give them choices, and you don't want those choke points of they have to find the one secret door, otherwise they can't get through the rest of it. And to be honest with you, Tome of Horrors, and I know Tome of Horrors was written for a very different purpose, but
Mhm.
Tome of Horrors broke all of those rules and didn't
Yeah.
have splitting things, and there was choke points where there was one secret door to get through and everything,
Yeah.
but it was designed that way.
Yeah.
It's just not, it wouldn't stand up in today's standard, today's modern design. It's probably not the way to do it.
No.
But so you can give that one a pass, but in general, You don't want to have things like that where you have to have a secret door, and that's one of the things in the playtest that we ran a couple of weeks ago. There is a secret door. There's a couple of ways to get down to the next level of the dungeon, and we had this big conversation with my playtest group of like, was there enough clues? Was there enough ways? Even though they were kind of tricky, did we feel that it was? And it was nice to talk that through. And that's what we playtest for, exactly for those kind of things. So great. All right. So my number 2 is our second crossover of the night, of course. And this is the Errol Otis map on page 3. I mean, this is amazing. This map is, again, we talk about this all the time when we say we're going to do this module. We're going to do S2. What is the first thing that jumps in your mind? And the first thing that jumps into my mind is this map. I mean, before the weapons, before any of the other individual encounters, before the giant crab. That's why this one was higher than the giant crab. But this map just sings to me, and I just love the open-endedness to it. And I just always wanted to go find that undead dragon. I mean, that was our first Dracolich. I mean, Dracoliches weren't a thing back then. I mean, we were just the undead dragon. We're like, whoop, you can have an undead dragon? That's awesome. It's like I love that concept and everything. And so that part is good. And the fact that it's not really important to the module. It's really kind of a another like, oh, here's just this map of the surrounding lands. It's not even to scale. It's literally just there for I'm not going to say filler, because it probably was there for filler, but it's the good kind of filler there. It's kind of like, when you're watching a movie and there's fan service done, there's good fan service and there's not good. There's eye-rolling fan service. This was good filler material. This is filler material that gave you launching points to other adventures, and that's a great thing. Just like a rumor table or something like that. So so that is my number 2, Errol Otis's map on page 3.
Nice. All right, drum roll please. Going to my number 1, and how can I not go there? The Ziggurat. For sheer wacky goodness, you can't beat the Ziggurat. I mean, I think
we've got a picture of that. That's the inverted.
Because the picture is definitely worth 1,000 words in that. And I've seen multiple. I've seen player art of the Ziggurat too online. That's just incredible.
Oh, what about I've seen 3D terrain recreated in this with minis. Wow! And I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you,
wow.
It was awesome. I came across that. I was getting lost down the rabbit hole this afternoon finding.
Yeah, there's that picture. I mean, just showing your players that, and then you just take a breath as a DM and you sit back and you let your players exclaim out whatever they might, because it's completely insane, the room, and not to mention difficult, but the change in terrains, the change in creatures, how much fighting is going on potentially in this room. Will the players somehow bypass it? There's a lot of stuff going on there. And then you have potentially a difficult encounter at the bottom. So it's a really, it's a heck of a room. So I have to give it up for the Ziggurat room area 26 as my number.
And there are rules for if you collapse the water walls, where the water will fill up to and everything. And I'm like, always like, wow, did they actually like calculate that out? Did somebody do the volume calculations? And I'm like, because that's crazy. But
and you're picturing, these, all these creatures kind of mixing together in this water, and it's insane. It's completely, definitely one of the 5 things I think about when I think of this module is I think of that room.
I would agree. That's probably, after I get past the Errol Otis map, that's probably the next thing I think of is that encounter, because that is such a memorable encounter that is definitely ingrained in there. So I mean, for my number 1. That was your number 1, right? Or is that your 2?
Yes. Yep.
That was all right, my number 1. So I thought about that encounter, and I even thought about putting an honorable mention, but it was a little too cliche. So I wanted to go.
Yeah, I agree.
So I followed my heart. My heart, and I went Wave the Sentient Trident. Because of course I had a character who was semi-aquatic back in the day, high-level fighter, and Wave was his weapon that, once I went through this module and everything, Wave was the best. I mean, all those items were amazing, but a +3 trident, 1 die 10 points of damage base, and it was Its special purpose was to death or disfigure those who didn't worship Poseidon or any other sea-loving god. It acted as a trident of fish command, a trident of warding. It finds water. It grants water breathing and underwater action. It's got that cube of force ability, which we talked about, which was so cool. That cube of force thing got my character out of a lot of jams. Speech and telepathy, and then the kicker. If you roll a nat 20, it dehydrates you, and your foe loses half of its hit points, which is like amazing. Half of its hit points. You could be fighting a dragon with 100 hit points, and it's going to take 50 damage in addition to the damage. Yeah,
super powerful item. And I had a character who actually used that item, and
yeah,
you're basically Aquaman if you have that.
Basically, yes.
Basically.
But it was awesome. It was awesome. I mean, it was really great. So that's my number one is Wave the Sentient
Nice.
Trident.
Definitely fulfills that power fantasy.
It does. So
all right, let's see what time. All right, I think we have time. Circling back real fast, right, on the comments from Odysseus. Again, we did not convert White Plume Mountain, but to address your first question, I think we can handle that one. What is the hardest part of the process to convert old modules to 5e? Why don't you go first, Chris?
So I think the hardest part is there are just some things that don't translate. Some things translate very easily whenever something gets a bonus. Like if you saw something like, oh, if it uses this, it gets +4 to hit. Well, that's easy. In 5e, you switch that to advantage or disadvantage. If it's something was like you have a -4, if you try to run across the slippery room, you have a -4 on your dexterity check. No, that's easy. You just give it disadvantage in that. So some of the tricky things is when things don't exactly fit, when you've got that square peg and that circle hole. So then you have to try and think of, all right, how would this translate to 5e? To be honest with you, most of the stats actually translate rather, I won't say easily, but you can do them fairly well once you've converted as many of hundreds of stats that I have. It does kind of come second nature to you, some of the different things that you can do. And everybody does them a little bit differently. 5e is much like first edition, where there are rules, but like Wizards of the Coast even breaks those rules while they're doing some of their monster creation. So that gives you, all that ability to kind of do whatever you want to do and thematically kind of make the critter that you want to make. So I would say the converting of the stats and then also converting some of the magic items and the spells, that's some of the funner parts to do. Without a doubt. But sometimes you just get to some like S2 would be a difficult one to convert because there's a lot of different things going on. Obviously, skill checks would come into it. Back in 1E, there wasn't anything called skill checks. So so it would almost be maybe too many skill checks where it would maybe even slow the game down. So
and I think my first answer to this question, or the first thing that popped in my mind, and you kind of said it, is when frankly things just don't exist in 5th edition. And then, but it's also fun, like you said, because I ran into this a lot with converting the Temple of Elemental Evil, and that there are a surprising amount of spells and magic items and things that simply didn't make that jump from 1st edition all the way to 5th edition. So then, we're put in a position of creating a sort of whole cloth, either a monster or a spell. And that was, I think, the biggest challenge. That and just certain class things didn't, a wizard of 5th level and 5th edition is not quite the same as a wizard of 5th level in 1st edition as far as spells or power or hit points or anything. So you have some classy inequalities there. And 1st edition was very big on saying, well, this room has got 5th edition magic user is a your bad guy, and then you think, well, all right, 5th edition wizard, is that stronger now? You have to think about those conversion elements. So I think that's better, but a lot of that at the same time is fun because it would give us, right, as translators, some creative license to recreate or to really try to stay faithful to these things but recreate them for 5th edition, which I find fun. I think that's kind of the funnest part of that translating job is to make those spells live in 5th edition. So
and it is very different than actual just writing. And we've seen some people struggle with it, like you set it in front of them and say, nope, I need you to convert this, and then they're like, no, I want to write it, and it's like, nope, you're not writing it, you're converting it. So So it's definitely different. It's a different approach.
Mhm.
And it can be, it's certainly not as creative a process. It's more of a
Mhm.
technical process, but like you said, Rick, it can be very rewarding. And it certainly is. So yeah, so thanks for the question there. So let's see. Anyone could recommend me a Goodman Games converted module for a tabletop role-playing game, D&D noob like myself? Well, Into the Borderlands is based off. That was the one that you actually get two modules in there. You get In Search of the Unknown, and you get Keep on the Borderlands. Those were both created for noobs essentially back
Yeah.
in first edition. So those are great. I would tend away from Isle of Dread, because Isle of Dread was a wilderness crawl, and that was more of a quote unquote expert level, and that's getting your players out of the dungeon and putting them on a dinosaur filled island and letting them do their own thing. That's a little that takes a little different. It takes some DM chops to do that. So I would tend toward that. I would probably not say Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. That's number
No.
3.
Yeah.
Lost City is another one that was a low level module that was sandboxy,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of different things to do in it. So Lost City would be a good one as well. And then Temple of Elemental Evil is huge, but the very beginning of Temple of Elemental Evil, the village of Hamlet,
Yeah.
was designed
Yeah.
specifically to start campaigns off.
Yeah.
But that's probably more that you might get Temple of Elemental Evil and see all 700 pages, and you just might like die. So that's probably nice. So I would probably stick with Into the Borderlands and Lost City. So or number 1 and or number 4.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say
Yeah.
those two are probably the most welcoming to
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of
Yeah,
experience.
I agree. I think those two are two approachable choices
Yep.
for the quote
So
unquote noob.
all right. So we are going to wrap the show up. We're just about at an hour, so that's good timing. So our next
Yeah.
show is March 13th at 8 p.m. So that's 3 weeks from tonight, just like always. And I am proud to announce a different type of show, a very, very different type of show. We are going to do our very first tier list, which is a little bit different. Apparently tier lists are all the rage with video gamers. So we are going to select some theme category of monsters from first edition, and probably 10 of them or so. And then Rick and I are going to rank them in a tier list, and we're going to come up with some funny titles for our different tiers. And hot garbage and really awesome and stuff like that. So it's going to be a different show. But hopefully you guys check it out, and then let us know in the comments if you guys like what we're doing with this thing. And if so, we'll do more tier lists in the future. If not,
Yeah.
you'll never see another tier list ever again. and we'll and we'll try some other things to
And
see.
we're
But
experimenting a little bit,
yeah,
because we can potentially see ourselves tiering modules, ranking
yeah.
adventures and all kinds of things. We're going to throw monsters out the next show and give that a whirl, but I certainly see us doing it with modules and other things. So I hope everybody will give it a try, even though it's a little out of the norm. Certainly, we're not done talking about great adventures here, to be sure.
Yeah.
As we like to
So
say, just think of us as two old geeks hanging with you at the bar or
yeah.
in the basement discussing classic adventures.
And if for no other reason, tune in to see the car wreck that is live TV as we try to do a tier list that we've never
Yes.
done before. and just like, that might be the appeal right there. So
That's right. Because there's, no getting too comfortable.
exactly. So all right, let's wrap up with our pearls of wisdom. And Rick, why don't you go first?
Sure. And you actually it's funny, you touched on my pearl wisdom a little bit when I was talking about the tri-point dungeon design. You kind of went into it. And I was going to say my pearl wisdom, as particularly for the newer DMs out there, is to avoid what I call dead ends. And this module has a great example of it right in the beginning, in that you want to avoid a very linear path where the players can come right up against that door that there's only one way to open, or that mystery that there's only one clue to solve, or that kind of thing. Basically, you know, try to avoid putting your players in a position where if they don't guess the clue, or they don't guess the answer, or they can't figure out the door puzzle, everything comes to a grinding halt. That's kind of like the D&D version of dead air. You know, you don't want that to happen. And I think there's a nice kind of example of avoiding that in this module, because right in the beginning of the module, there's a wall of force that drops down. There's the Geno Sphinx there. And there's potentially one of those dead end type situations. But Lawrence Schick wisely puts in that if you can't bypass the wall of force by guessing the riddle, the wall of force is particularly weak. And he goes in describing ways that this weakened wall of force can be taken down via spells. So there's an out there. If the players cannot guess the Sphinx's riddle, they can then go to plan B. And I guess that's my kind of pearl of wisdom, is have that plan B, or as we'd like to talk about when we talk about mystery modules, if you're going to make a mystery, triple the clues. You know, if you think you've got enough clues and you're writing it, you know what, go back and double them, because you want your players are going to miss some of them. You know, not every player is going to guess every riddle, no matter how obvious it may seem to the DM who has the answer right in front of them. So give them that out. And that's my pearl of wisdom, is to try to, you know, use this as an example, avoid those dead ends.
That's excellent pearl of wisdom. My pearl of wisdom for this week is going to be, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, add those little one-liners of other launching points off onto other adventures, and you know what, throw the breadcrumbs out there and then see what your players are going to latch onto. Maybe they don't want to do anything to do with the undead dragon. Maybe they do need potions and they might want to risk going to the hermit that's got potions. But they will never do those things if you don't put them out there. And it's always good to put them out there. And even if they, you know, there is no crime in if you put all these adventure hooks and seeds out there, and then they decide to go on one, and if you're not prepared for it, well then, you know, end your session, or just say, hey, I need a half hour to go figure out where this is going to go. There's no harm in that. You know, sometimes a half hour at the game table where everybody can just kick back, the game master leaves and goes to another room and does some quick prep work or something. The players actually have a good time just talking and socializing in that, or planning or leveling up or something like that. So, I mean, the timing doesn't always work out, but don't ever be afraid to take a break and actually develop one of those seeds, because it's great. It's easy to throw those seeds all over the place like crash seed, but then, you know, they're only going to go for maybe one of them or two of them. So you know, don't make the mistake of developing all of them, because then you're just going to do a lot of extra work that they're never going to follow on. So so that's basically mine, is definitely adventure seeds and launching points, and don't be afraid to use them and everything. Thanks guys for the chat today. It was great. I see there's another idea for a show, the home bookshelf tour. Sadly, most of my role-playing books are in boxes underneath my beds. I could show you my board game collection pretty easily, which is very extensive, I might add, and is all documented on an Excel spreadsheet for insurance purposes. But we could certainly pull parts of our collection out and show off some pieces of our collection. I think would be kind of cool. So maybe we could
that
do
would be
that.
fun.
And again, you guys might get this closet of holding show. You know, it might happen if we could recreate this somehow. It might just happen. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks everybody for G Blaster, and everybody, Dice Station Zebra, and Odesses. I hope I'm saying that right.
We love the interaction. And give us a follow, give us a like, subscribe. It all helps us. We want to keep bringing you these shows because we're enjoying it as much as you are. So thanks for tuning in.
All right, take care everybody. Have a great couple of weeks. Bye.